This video is all about drawing eyes, starting with a simple sphere structure for our eyeball, and then moving on to placing an eyelid over it and an eyebrow, and then showing how we can actually place it into a head consistently so it sits properly in a skull. Then we'll take a look at some of the subtleties that happen when you open and close your eyes, or when you look from one direction to another. We'll look at how the appearance of lids change when you look at eyes from different angles, and then we'll finish with a tight drawing of an eye done in a fairly simple style to really break down how we can go about describing our forms. I'm David Finch. I've been a comic book artist for over 25 years. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe and share with your friends. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business, and to do it all incredibly easily. All right, to start to talk about drawing eyes, we're going to start with a sphere. And the way that I take a circle like this and turn it into a sphere on a flat page in a way that I can understand is I draw a vertical center line and a horizontal center line, and my pupil will go here and my iris will go here. I can draw that same circle. Because it's a circle, it's really not going to change shape no matter what angle I draw it at. And I can draw my vertical here and my horizontal here, and then I'll have my iris here and my pupil here. And so I can angle it really any way I want, and I have a good sense of where my eye is in space just with my vertical and horizontal lines. All right, and clean this up just a little bit. And one other thing to bear in mind, I'm going to draw another circle for my eye. I'm going to draw my horizontal completely flat along, and then my vertical is along the side of the eye. And so my sclera will be here, my pupil will be here, and the eye actually comes out just a little bit. So it doesn't sit completely flat along that circle. So you actually get a bit of a bump out there. And that's all well and good, but you're not going to get very far drawing eyes like this. You really need to be able to put them in lids, and then once you get your lids working, you need to be able to place them in the head. And so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start to draw some lids on our eyes. And so I'm going to draw a sphere for my eye, and this is truthfully not something that you'll need to do when you're drawing these practically, but just for understanding the form that we're dealing with and getting a sense of the overall shapes, it's a good idea to draw through, and that's really what we're doing right now. So I've got my overall eye drawn in again, and my lid is going to connect along this line, this center line. Approximately, some people's eye will ride up just a little bit on the outside, or maybe down, or up or down here, but generally speaking, we're going to draw, and it's going to connect to just about the top of my iris, maybe cover some of it. And my bottom eyelid is going to cover some of the lower iris. And then my tear duct is going to sit right here. And that's good as a basis, but what we really need to understand from here is that our eyelids actually have a little bit of thickness. And so I'm going to draw some of that thickness along the top here, and some of that along the bottom here. And then I'm going to draw my fold of my upper eyelid, and my eyebrow will go just about here. Just rough it in here quickly. Now this eyebrow isn't going to make a lot of sense, and it's going to be a struggle to place until we start to actually construct the head, which we'll do in a minute. But just for now, just to get our shapes established, that's going to do it. And I'm going to draw the same eye. So this will again be the right eye. So I'm going to have my lids attach here and here along this line. And you can see that line curves. And so my upper lid will be here. It's going to touch the top of my iris. My lower lid is going to be here, and it's going to cover some of the bottom of my iris. And my tear duct will just sit like this. I'm going to see quite a bit more of my upper lid thickness from this angle because I'm really looking up at it, and I'm really not going to see any lower lid thickness here at all. And I'm going to get my fold for the upper lid here and my eyebrow. And if I draw an eye looking down, we'll do two more examples, one looking down and then one looking directly to the side. And so I'm going to angle my vertical like this, my horizontal like this, so my eye will be looking down. Here's my iris, pupil. I tend to draw in a very sketchy way, and then I clean just with a kneaded eraser, And it's a very helpful way for me to be able to not have to commit to a line and still get something tight and clean in the end. And this is still fairly loose, but it's going to give us everything we need. And so now I'm going to want to connect one eyelid here. My other eyelid will connect here, and it's very foreshortened on this side because it turns away from us there. And so here's my upper eyelid. My lower eyelid is going to have quite a bit more curve to it because it's curving around the bottom of the eye. And you can see that my overall line horizontally around the sphere of my eyeball curves. And so this actually really kind of follows that curve too, the same way that this actually followed this curve here. And because of the angle that we're looking at, I'm going to see more of my lower eyelid. And I'm just going to use this eye here. We're going to connect our eyelid just about here. There's my upper lid. My lower lid is going to be just about here. There's my upper eyelid. My lower eyelid is going to sit just like this. And there's really my structure. My eyebrow will be just about here. Hopefully this gives you a simple sense of how your eyelid fits over your eye based on the angle that you're drawing the eye and how you can change that angle. And think of it in terms of a 3D sphere by using this method here. But we want to take this construction and make it work on a face. I tend to use a very simple skull construction. Here's the center line for my head, and you can see I'm using a vertical center line. I'm going to use a horizontal center line, and I've got a sphere slightly flattened for my cranium here, and then my actual face sits below it, just like this. I'm going to draw another center line around this side, and this will be where my ear sits here. And I've got a line for my eyebrow here, a line for my forehead here, a line for my nose here, and then my chin here, and these are all even divisions. And so from here, I need to get a little bit more shape, because drawing an eye on here, I'll be drawing an eye on something that really is just a flat shape in space. And so I'm going to start by indenting for where my brow indents into my eyes, coming back out slightly for the base of the nose, back in, and then slightly out again for my chin. I'm going to indent again here, my cheek, and that's going to connect into my chin here. On this side, I'm going to indent just like this and follow my cheek down like this. This will be the side of my head here. And so I've got something that really flattens around to the side here. And it's obviously not completely flat, but that'll give you a good starting point. The nose connects just about here. This will be my brow, and I'm just going to sketch in a brow here quickly. So you can see that your nose doesn't start at your brow, it starts just below. And so you indent a little bit, then you come out, and the nose ends at this line here. And your mouth will sit here. And so your eye is going to sit just below your brow on your face, just like this. And I think I'm a little large with my overall skull. Here's my ear. Get my proportions working a little bit better. And this right here represents the kind of simple form that you can use when you're trying to represent a head for drawing as a basic structure to place all your features on. And it works well once you understand the forms, but because this is a simplification of a skull, there are things that you really need to know in order to be able to make this work as well as possible. And so to help us with that, I have an actual skull, not an actual skull. This is a fake skull that I bought on Amazon, but it looks pretty real. And it's a very useful tool for really understanding the actual planes of the face and how they're made up. And so I'm going to go ahead and draw my simple head shape again using my skull as reference. So I've got a sphere for my cranium, then my face is going to attach just below that. I've got a line for my brow. My ear will attach just back here. I've got a center line for my nose, line for my forehead, and then my chin here. And I've got basically something like this, a very simple form, just enough to give me a basis to draw my face on. But with the skull, I can really see that I have sockets for my eyes, and this is really the key to making your eyes work on a face. And so I'm actually going to go ahead and draw those sockets. So instead of just drawing a really simplified form, I'm going to draw a bit of a simplified version of the sockets that I can see in my skull that I'm holding in my hand. And my nose is going to come out here. Obviously I've got a hole, but I don't really need to draw that. I can just draw a nose. And my cheek, I'm going to come around and up just about like this. My other cheek is here. My mouth area next just like this. So here's more of a skull construction or a face. Hopefully you can see why drawing this every time underneath the face would start to get a little bit tedious, but it's really important for drawing eyes more than anything to understand the bone structure that exists right here. So I'm going to go ahead and lighten this down, and I'm just going to finish the eyes. Along the crest of the bone at the top here will be my eyebrow. And it becomes very easy to place because it just follows the shape of the ocular cavity, top of that bone. And then my eyes actually, I'm going to draw them as balls, will fit inside. And you can see I've got my eyes fit inside those cavities. And I'm going to draw a center line across my pupil and iris. And I can delineate where my eyelids will go here, just like this. And my other eyelid, just like this. And let's lighten this down. We don't need all that underdrawing. And so you can see, and so hopefully you can see that it becomes very easy to place eyes properly in the skull if you think about it in these terms. I'm going to draw a face from the side. I'm going to quickly get my overall form established. And it can be a little bit difficult to know where in here to start placing your eye. Is it here, right up against the nose, which I see very commonly people do this, or is it well back here? The secret, using a skull, I can really see exactly how that cavity sits in here, and I'm going to go ahead and draw that. And so that would be the cavity for my eye right there. And let's lighten that down. I'm going to go ahead and draw my eyeball inside there. And I can just draw my eyelids, draw my eyebrow along the top of that bone, finish my nose, lighten this down, clean it up a little bit. And you can see that that eye is pretty well placed in there, and it becomes very easy using this kind of form. Let's draw a face that we're looking up at. So there's my very simple head construction. We're looking up at this face here. I'm going to lighten this down a little bit, and let's use this again very quickly. You really won't need to use reference at all. And the angle that I'm seeing at this at will be different than what you're seeing. But the important part is to just understand that you're drawing this shape of the skull in space. My nose starts here, projects out, where the other eye cavity, my forehead, will come above it here. My mouth will be just along here. There's a pretty simple construction just to get the idea across. And for me to put my eyes in here, I'm going to draw an eye inside here, another eye inside here. And so I'm going to draw my brow again, just along the top here, my other brow here. My eyelids will sit. My tear ducts right there. And you can see that that really places those eyes nicely on the skull. Before we move on, I wanted to take a minute to talk about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is a one-stop website solution ideal for artists with easy-to-use templates that you can just drag and drop all of your content into, to social media integration, video galleries, and e-commerce templates so you can start selling artwork and merch right away. Squarespace will even allow you to connect with your audience and generate revenue through gated members-only content. You can manage your members, send email communications, and leverage audience insights all in one easy-to-use platform. With Squarespace, there's no need to go anywhere else. Setting up a website and updating are easier with Squarespace than anything I've ever tried. I can't recommend it enough. If you're ready to give Squarespace a try, head on over to squarespace.com/David Finch to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using code David Finch. All right, let's get back to it. I'm going to go ahead and draw another simple head. We're not going to use a skull this time. I'm just going to use my knowledge of the shape of my eye cavities to help me with my head construction. So here's my basic shape. I've got my face here, my skull portion here. My nose is here, my chin, another division for my forehead here. So these are nice even divisions. My ear will be just about here. Comes up between the brow and the nose. These are just simple shapes at this point. And I'm going to go ahead and just draw in shapes for my ocular cavities here. And I feel like at the angle that I've drawn, I'm a little bit thin. And drawing those cavities in actually really made that clear to me. My nose is going to project out from here. Starts here, that would be the bridge of my nose. My mouth would be just about here. I feel like I came a little bit short with my chin. And I want to point out, I really wish that this was all working out absolutely perfectly and I wasn't having to erase and my proportions were working perfectly. But I find I'll go through times inexplicably where I'll draw my face in, and once I get everything properly established, my head will be too short or too long or whatever it is. And so you need to be prepared to make those adjustments. When you draw your initial shape, it's easy for it to be a little bit off. But once you start to establish all of the finer shapes inside it and get it constructed well, it makes it much more clear where you need to make adjustments. And I find to this day, I end up making those kinds of adjustments all the time. And so that would be much more of the kind of head construction that I would use now based on the knowledge that I have if I want to make sure that everything fits well. And so I'm going to go ahead and lighten it. So in a more practical sense, this is the way that I would actually approach drawing an eye. I'm not going to bother drawing that entire circle in there, but I'm going to allow this ocular kind of space to inform where my eye is going to go. Here's my brow. I'm going to draw in my other eye. That's really much more how I would actually approach it. And if I feel like I'm not really working properly, I can go ahead and just draw in the spheres for my eyes here, just like this, and make sure that they're sitting inside that cavity well. So that's how we can go ahead and make sure that our eyes are actually sitting in our skull properly. Now that we have that, let's draw the actual eye itself. And I'm going to start drawing an eye in the way that I would do it. This is something you'll be quite a bit more familiar with. I know that I have a sphere behind here, but I don't need to draw that whole sphere. I just am aware of it. I've gone ahead and sketched in a pair of eyes here. I'm going to lighten this down, and I want to point out a few things that are very important because my eye is at this angle here. And so that's the angle that I've drawn this eye at. And I didn't bother actually doing this on my real drawing because that would start to get pretty tedious, but it's important that I understand that I'm dealing with this form. And so you can see that I see quite a bit more eye here than I do here because it's foreshortened as it turns away from us. And so in my actual eye here, because I'm looking at it from a bit of an angle, I've got more of my sclera showing here than I do here. I want to see some of that lid just a little bit there. Some of my eyelid also foreshortens around because it's rounding around a rounded form. My tear duct, and then my lower lid attaches here, and I've got my brow drawn just like this. I've got the bridge of my nose, and this is really defining my ocular cavity that we were talking about earlier. So that's going to sit just like this. And so I've got my brow sitting along the top of that, the ridge of my nose here, and it comes out here. And then my eye, I'm going to see, again, more of the sclera on this side and less on the other side. And this is also going to round around. See a bit of the sclera there. And that's going to be it. So it's very, very important. You can see how I'm actually rounding out and around. And then my curve is much longer here. And then it curves around that form here like this very quickly. Then I've got my tear duct here. And my eyelid actually follows kind of around the shape of that eye. And as we discussed earlier on, I'm going to draw a circle for my eye here. On the front of that circle, it's going to bump out where we actually have our iris. That might be a little bit exaggerated, but the fact that it bumps out like this actually creates an interesting effect when it comes to your eyelids that you really need to be aware of. So I'm going to draw this eye again just below, and I'm going to turn, instead of looking out this way, I'm going to have my eye looking the other way. So I'm just going to start the same way that I did and just sketch in my eye, my upper lid here. My eye would be here, but instead I want to draw it here, looking this way. And I'm not going to change a thing. And that's fine, but it really doesn't look right. And the reason for that is when you turn your eye, it actually changes the whole shape of your lid. And so I'm going to leave this here. And now this is going to flatten quite a bit, and it's going to round much more over my eye. And so I'd get something much more like this, where I'm actually pulling my lid over this way and lifting it. And this eye would really work exactly the same way. And so now I have my eyes looking out this way, and you can see that it's really pulled my lids a little bit subtly, but definitely noticeably in the direction of the eye. It really lends an incredible amount of realism to your eyes. it really lends a lot of believability to your expressions. So it's something that you want to be aware of. So I've got a very neutral eye that I've drawn here, and now what I want to do is draw that eye almost completely closed and really wide open and show you the way that your eyelids work in order to make that happen. And so the first thing I'm going to do is draw my eye open, much wider. And so in my sketch, I'm going to start with something that's obviously quite a bit wider. My pupil is going to be just about here. There's my tear duct. And I'm just kind of sketching in. And so I get a much taller, more rounded upper lid, because your upper lid is really where you get most of your movement when you open and close your eyes. The lower lid actually doesn't move much at all. And when you do move it, you tend to squint. And so there's an eye open much more widely, and you can see that I've lowered my bottom lid, and so that's moved, but what's really moved is my upper lid. And it becomes much more apparent when I draw an eye much more. And you can see quite a bit more of your upper lid when your eyes close like this. And it tends to look a little sleepy and tired. Because I've just lowered my upper lid, I've really not changed my lower lid. That's sitting in basically the same place, and the upper lid lowers down, and that really gives you that expression. If I want something that looks more squinted, I'll end up with something a little bit more like this. There, and that's more of a squinted eye, and you can see that I really don't see much of an upper lid because I've got my eyebrow pressed down, and that really rounds out your upper lid and pushes it down over the eye, and so you can only really see just a little bit of a lip here. And so you don't really get this large eyelid in the same way. One last thing that I want to make as clear as possible is just how much the angle you're seeing the eye from changes the appearance of your eyelids. And so here's my eye. We're looking down at my iris quite a bit here, just like this. And because of that, my upper lid is going to be very, very shallow and flat. And my lower lid is going to be much more rounded. Here is my tear duct here. And my brow will be lowered quite a bit down too. And if I'm looking at this eye and I'm looking upward, this is our angle. So there's my pupil. Here's my iris here. Now my upper lid is going to start here and here, and it's going to be very rounded. And my lower lid will actually even kind of come up and round this way. You have to be a little careful with that, but if you're looking at it from enough of an angle, you'll actually see it round like this as opposed to downward like this. And because of that angle, you'll see a much greater space between your eye and your brow, like this. And if that doesn't make sense, I want to show you that your eye is going to be a point just about here. And so if I drop my angle down very low, you can see that there's very little distance between my brow line and my eye. But if I lift it, so you're looking up at that eye, there's quite a bit more space. And that's just the angle that you're seeing at. And it's very important in order to be able to draw 3D shapes in your head to understand that concept. And that's just for shortening. So that's why that's happening. So we've got a whole bunch of theory established. And now I just want to go ahead and draw a nice big eye and talk about the kinds of details that I like to use in my own art style. I've got my eye sketched in, and I'm going to start to draw tightly. And at this point now, I'm not using any line weight. I just want to get my cartoon. I guess I'm using a little line weight I did there. It's very difficult to resist, but I want to try to resist as much as I can and just get my forms established. So I've got my eye basically drawn in terms of just simplified form. I'm gonna finish in my eyebrow. And I like to think of my eyebrow in terms of a few pieces. I've got a piece here, and then a piece here. And then I've got a little end piece, just like this. So what I have right now is fairly simple, and I'm gonna go ahead and start to detail this in the way that I would for a finished comic page. I'm gonna start by darkening in my eyebrow. I have the basic shape for my eyebrow. Obviously that's a little bit too clean and perfect, and I want to just break it up. I don't want to get too carried away, but I'm just going to draw a couple little extra lines in there just to give it a little bit more. I still want it to be a fairly graphic form though, even at a large size. I tend to like my eyebrows to be fairly graphic. That's going to be just about it. My upper lid, because I've got my lighting and I've decided that my lighting is going to be coming downward like this, I can see my upper lid here. I've got it drawn in. I'm going to just darken that. Just like this. And I actually really want this whole thing to be quite a bit darker. And I'm going to imagine this as catching a shadow because it actually rests over the eye and has a lip to it. So this would be dark in here. I also, right now, I'm just going to go ahead and draw in a circle. This is going to be a reflection in my eye. And I'm going to draw another little circle here. This is going to be a bit of a lower reflection, like another light source, maybe down below. And these reflection shapes are a bit of a cipher. I tend to do them all the time, just about like this. I don't really play with them too much because they work. And a lot of what I do, because it's cartooning, tends to be a bit of a visual shorthand. It gets the idea across in a way that makes sense for the reader, in a way that they're used to. And I'm going to want the top of my eye here, because this is actually recessed, to be fairly dark. I'm going to darken this whole area up here. And the reason for that is, from the side, you can imagine your eye. Here would be your pupil, here would be your iris, and this is just clear in here. And so that actually sits back a ways because of that. And so when you put an eyelid over that, my eyelid is going to end up shadowing all the way down in through here. And so I'm doing that. I'm going to want to pull up some shadow in here. My upper lid actually rests over my lower lid. And so I want to make sure that that's established there. Some shadow into my tear duct. My eye, I'm going to go just a little bit dark here. I don't want to be too dark here because this is actually catching the light. But a little bit of a lip. I don't want to get too carried away drawing bags under my eyes, but they can add quite a bit of believability. Come out a little bit for some eyelashes. And that's a bit of a choice. You can do that if you think it works, or you can leave that out if it starts to look a little feminine, you're looking for more of a masculine look, or it starts to look a bit overdone. And so now I want to get some detail into my eye. I'm going to start a little thicker here and go toward my center and just bump the line a little bit. I'm going to be a little thicker and heavier with it as I go up toward the top because I want it to darken, and it's going to fade toward the bottom. From here, I can just start to, in a really simple way, just start to render out just to soften some of these forms. We talked about rendering in a video just a couple of videos ago, and I'm going to use basically the same techniques. And that's really it. All right, thank you so much for watching. I will see you every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern for Monday Night Draw, and I will see you in the next video.